Robert Downey Jr. is clashing with the directors and Marvel Studios over Avengers Doomsday. We got a report that talks about reshoots, wanting to do things himself, not liking the way that things are working, demanding his own rewrites, and so many other things. So let's get into what's going on the set of Avengers Doomsday that's setting things back. So right off the bat, you're going to be pissed off with everything I'm about to say in the next 3 minutes or so. So let's get into this. Robert Downey Jr. has an ego. This happens in Hollywood with every actor. You might not like it, you might not want to admit it, but he does. And let's be real about this. He got this ego and got as big as he did because of Iron Man. He is one of the highest paid actors in the history of Hollywood because of the role of Iron Man. Now, revisionist history will tell you that it's Robert Downey Jr. that made Iron Man a household name, but in reality, it's the exact opposite. Did Chris Hemsworth make Thor a household name, or was it people going to see Thor because they liked the Marvel Universe that made Thor a household name? Same with Chris Evans, same with other characters in the MCU. People now pretend like there would be no Iron Man without Robert Downey Jr., but the sheer fact was that nobody wanted to hire or even cared about Robert Downey Jr. in the projects he was already in, up until Iron Man ended up being a box office success, making over $600 million. Then he started to rebound. And of course, once Avengers happened, everybody's stock in Hollywood literally rose together. Again, you're not going to like everything or anything I just said, because a lot of people don't like reality. They like to look at things with rose-tinted glasses, and I've already seen people say that if Robert Downey Jr. was never Iron Man, there would be no MCU. That is literally and factually wrong. That's like stating the Dark Knight trilogy wouldn't be as good or exist the way it does without Christian Bale, when in fact it would. Another actor would have done the same exact job, maybe not as good as Christian Bale, or maybe even better. We'll never know. But I needed to get this out of the way because it sets the tone for everything we're talking about over the course of the rest of the video in regards to RDJ and what's been reported. So let's get into the report of Robert Downey Jr. becoming what they're saying is an egomaniac on the set of Doomsday. So let's get this out of the way first and foremost. Is Robert Downey Jr. the next version of The Rock? No, let's not go there. Nobody has a bigger ego than The Rock. But there is already a history of his ego. Remember when he was hyping up big announcements and it ended up being Doolittle? And then we know that the studio was convinced to pay him tons of money because he was like, no, I'm the draw, not the characters I play. What happened there? And I've even seen people argue that he's the draw for Oppenheimer. Guys, how hard are you going to glaze for this? Come on. Because here's the latest report. So getting into it, Jeff Snyder was talking about what's going on. And he has a report on what happened with Robert Downey Jr. on set of the film, specifically doing Doctor Doom scenes. He says, and I quote, "They had a body double and a face double, and Robert would stand outside the scene reading the lines. Apparently, after 2 to 3 weeks, he said, 'This isn't working. I want to shoot the whole thing with me in the suit.'" End quote. So for a fact, we know, because the Russo brothers confirmed it, that Robert Downey Jr. wrote an entire backstory, his character's mannerisms, who this version of Doctor Doom is, why he's doing the things he's doing, and that he has an element of creative freedom that no other actor has had in the MCU before, and by all accounts, probably never will again. So essentially what Jeff Snyder has now stated, and this is true, there was a body double for Robert Downey Jr. Somebody that would do stuff in the suit, because again, Robert Downey Jr. did not want to wear that clunky big armor for an extended period of time. Because again, he didn't even want to wear Iron Man armor, which is why they ended up going mostly motion capture. The more they had to pay him per more contract negotiations. If you don't believe me, you can look this up. There's interviews talking about it. There's Marvel Studios and visual effects artists talking about this. It's all out there for you to look at. But the more money he started to make, the less he wanted to work in the suit. So what Jeff has reported here is that after 2 to 3 weeks of shooting Doctor Doom scenes, RDJ said, I don't like this, and we're going to do this all over again. Effectively reshooting everything they've just done because he wants to wear the suit. And he wants to get the mannerisms right and everything like that, which in my opinion is not bad. If he thinks that it wasn't going good and that's not how it should be played, then yeah, let him do it. But again, it's causing, clearly, problems with production, hence why we had a substantial delay. And I can 100% confirm, as I know, that yes, there was a body double. And yes, from what I've heard, I can't confirm this entire thing, but a part of this is very true in regards to the way that they were shooting those body double scenes. So with that out of the way, let's move on to the next part of the discussion and the report from Jeff Snyder, where he compares the dysfunction, the testosterone levels, and compares them to what happened on the set of Fast and Furious. So I compare a lot of things on this channel to professional wrestling because it's easy and the two things go hand in hand. Professional wrestling is like comic books. Every week you get a new issue or two and you keep going with the story. And the characters in those stories are played by real people and their egos get out of control the more creative freedom they get. And once they get to the top, they want to hold others back or they think they got superiority. So here's the next quote from Jeff. He said, and I quote, "The dysfunction I've heard about on the set is second only to the Fast and Furious movies. I mean, we mentioned a behind-the-scenes incident earlier this year that I didn't want to get into detail about. And someone probably made it sound more dramatic than it actually was. But yeah, I think again that there's a lot of testosterone and a lot of ego on the set. A lot of people who think they know the best path. In the end, only one person's path matters. And that's actually Robert Downey Jr.'s path." End quote. Okay, so what he's saying here in essence is Robert Downey Jr. having so much control over who his Doom is, what he's doing, and all that. He's got this element of freedom that they gave him to do his thing, right? Many actors get this. Tom Cruise, the bigger he got, the more freedom he got in tons of films. Do you guys remember the Mummy movie? That film was supposed to be completely different and actually focus on Sofia Boutella's mummy. Then Tom Cruise joined the cast, and because of the price he commands, they let him run roughshod on that script. The script changed from, hey, the main character is the mummy, Sofia Boutella, to this is nothing like what we set out to do. And to this day, every single person from that production is still affected by it in some way, especially, unfortunately, Sophia. So what we end up getting is essentially what he's saying, and I can also confirm a part of this. I can't confirm this entire thing, but I know somebody that, again, works close to this film, and something they told me about 2.5 months ago about the production of this film straight up lines up with what I'm hearing here, especially with people on the set and the aspect of egos clashing. And that's the next part of the video that I want to get into because for right now, what I want to say here is everything Jeff Snyder said is typical things you see in big productions like this with so many big actors that are making, we're not talking millions of dollars, we're talking tens of millions of dollars. And at some point, you run into an issue where every single person there has to fall in line. And then you got the directors who want to do their job and the job that the writer set out to do. But there is the override switch, which is the actors who have some semblance of creative control now. And this isn't the first time this has happened. If you guys remember, The Incredible Hulk is a major, and I mean major, problem because this is what happened with Edward Norton. He clashed with everybody because he, like Robert Downey Jr., had creative control on the backstory, wrote his own things, then he wanted reshoots, and then they did them, but the studio at the end didn't use his reshoots because they didn't like the way he was playing it, That all got scrapped. He was ultimately removed. Which then brings me to the final topic in this video, and that's whose egos are actually clashing. People always talk about egos in Hollywood, and there's plenty of reports, especially with Marvel actors. If you look at specific reports, we know that there are some egos in play. And again, this is how it goes. It is a dog-eat-dog world in Hollywood. There are only a handful of people that sit up top, and others are naturally below them. And everybody will start to fear the up-and-coming actor, which is why specific actors have specific things in their contract. Egos from Will Smith, where he must show his face a certain amount of time and be mentioned by name in marketing a certain amount of times and things like that, to people like Brad Pitt, who he demands, and it's in his contract, he has to eat, but only from one angle because that's his good jawline, to other actors like Tom Cruise, who has to have a specific amount of action scenes and scenes where he's running, to The Rock, where nobody is allowed to beat him or look bigger than him, to the point where they have to use perspective, like in the Lord of the Rings films. They have to do that with The Rock to make sure he looks bigger than everybody, because again, egos. And then you look at Marvel Studios and you realize they also got their own. Ryan Reynolds likes to command anything and everything with Deadpool. Nobody else was allowed a word after Deadpool 1, especially once they removed Tim Miller. That is a known fact because it's been widely discussed by all the trades. You can also look that up as well. Ryan took full control. He put his own team in there. And, well, the rest is history, right? We also know that there are elements of the MCU so far where we can see that egos were in play, whether it's the director or the actor. For example, it's been documented that Marvel Studios wanted more of a serious version of Thor: Love and Thunder. We even see that in the art book. We saw interviews where we saw Christian Bale talk about Gore the God Butcher's story that they completely removed once he was signed on, because Chris Hemsworth was pushing for something like Thor Ragnarok, where it was a balance of comedy and tone. Taika, because he just did Thor Ragnarok, he wanted Love and Thunder to be a Taika comedy. Guess who won out? Exactly. So per these reports, I don't want to speculate on who's clashing on set, but again, somebody I know, as I referenced them earlier, they confirmed what Jeff Snyder said earlier in the year. And I have an inkling of a couple names, because it's been hinted at to me, especially in regards to what they're doing with specific elements of these characters, because fighting for screen time, because that will also depend on some element of your pay and residuals, is a big deal. And there's quite a few actors in this film who now have egos, because again, they are at the top of their game, and they are the ones that everybody's looking at going, well, okay, you command this price, we paid you 10, 20, 25, 50 million. Naturally, you have a little bit more creative freedom. So once they put their foot down and say, I want X, the other guy might say, I don't like X, I want Z. But then Z might clash with the other person. So egos will clash. This is what happens. Do you guys remember during the production of Justice League, we got these exact reports. Nobody wanted to be there. They didn't want to be there because they didn't get along. They didn't see eye to eye. And per deadline, they all were doing Justice League from the get-go as just a paycheck, and they wanted to be nowhere near that set. Which I guess will bring me to the final part of this video, and that's how could this affect Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars? So the big worry is automatically, how will this affect anything? And we don't know. Let's be real, we don't know. You can't really speculate on that. For all we know, when this report came out and when this happened, maybe since then things have gotten better. Maybe Robert Downey Jr. put his foot down and said, hey, we need to do these 3 weeks of reshoots. I get it, there's going to be delays because we're falling behind on production, but it's going to be beneficial. And they let him do a couple days and they said, you know what? Yeah, you're right. At the same time, whichever other actor put their foot down over something or question something, maybe they're also right. But at the end of the day, they're all going to make sure that they put their best foot forward, work together, and put their differences aside. And how do I know this? Because all you have to do is look at the likes of Fantastic Four First Steps. The entire main cast, including Galactus, are very vocal supporters of one specific country in the Middle East. Silver Surfer is the exact opposite. They all got along on set during the press tour and everything, but after that, they all go back to their own corners and on social media and start posting their beliefs. Because at the end of the day, it is a job. And they will do their job, because if they don't, the word will get out that they have an ego, that they ruin productions, and then they will get to the point where nobody wants to work with them. And if you want an example of this happening, look no further than Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. People forget that prior to Fast and Furious, he was in failure after failure after failure. And then he joins Fast and Furious 5, the film does big numbers, and he says, it's because of me. It must be, because I'm the new factor. So the franchise gets built on his name. They even do a spin-off, Hobbs and Shaw, which makes close to $1 billion. And you never hear of a sequel. Why? Because his ego clashed directly with Jason Statham and the rest of the Fast and Furious family and crew. And therefore, he's no longer in that franchise. And if he does come back, it's a minor thing and his ego is now checked. He convinced an entire studio to bend over backwards and push Black Adam in video games, in cartoons, in another project, in Black Adam, and let him attempt to take over the entire DC universe. His ego was so high because he was such a big paid actor that he thought he could do no wrong. And now, he's in no projects. As a matter of fact, he had to step his ego down and go do an A24 film for pennies on the dollar to try to rebuild his reputation. I'm not saying that that's Robert Downey Jr. because I don't know. But what I'm saying is, this happens. There is a pattern. Val Kilmer had this same issue. Film after film. Jean-Claude Van Damme, Sylvester Stallone, Tom Cruise, Charlie Sheen, Gwyneth Paltrow, Bradley Cooper, Chris Pratt over and over, Katherine Heigl, Justin Bieber. Now I'm going into singers. I could literally sit here and name you another dozen people in the industry. Miles Teller, Shia LaBeouf. You know, I'll just keep going. They got massive egos once they joined a big franchise that made them. And as soon as they started exercising their big ego on set, once the projects were done, it was over. So will this hurt the end product? Maybe. If RDJ's nature gets out of control and if he doesn't want to do press because they didn't include his stuff, or another actor feels slighted, then maybe. But I don't think anybody's going to do that, because they know if you screw this up and it's one of the biggest films of all time, and it will be, both Doomsday and Secret Wars, you might as well quit your career and never act again, because nobody will work with you again. Thank you for checking out that video, and thank you for your continued support. Feel free to like, share, subscribe, do whatever you will. And if you're so inclined and would like some additional content from us, which includes unfiltered content and bonus discussions, we do offer exclusively in our member section. We hope to see you there. So thank you for watching, and have a good one.